Have you ever felt trapped by silent judgments and invisible comparisons, as if every success or joy is measured on a scale you never agreed to? These secret comparisons can quietly erode your confidence, feeding anxiety and self-doubt until you don't recognize your own worth. What if you could break free and rediscover a life unhindered by others' expectations? This book holds the key, a guide forged from urgent questions, hidden pains, and the universal yearning to be enough by simply being yourself. Allow yourself to step past the shadow of comparison and enter a story of genuine liberation. Drop Comparison Standards: The Power of Letting Go of Comparison, written and published by Mindset Liberation. Chapter 1: The Trap of Comparison. Comparison is a silent thief. Without warning, it infiltrates our minds and quietly steals contentment, robbing us of self-acceptance and replacing it with endless doubt. This invisible force grows stronger in the shadows of modern life, hiding in everyday moments and lurking behind screens, ready to pounce as soon as we glimpse someone else's highlight reel. In today's world, rarely does a day pass without an invitation to measure ourselves against others, whether it's a neighbor's promotion, a friend's vacation, or the perfection reflected in curated social media posts. Psychologists report that almost two-thirds of adults admit to feeling inadequate as a result of comparing themselves to others, and research suggests social comparison contributes directly to rising levels of anxiety, depression, and diminished self-esteem. But comparison is not an isolated affliction confined to a certain age or walk of life. It affects everyone, crossing boundaries of gender, occupation, and status. Even those who appear truly successful often battle this invisible adversary, haunted by the feeling that what they have might never be enough. The origins of comparison are deeply rooted in our psychology. Human beings are wired to assess their place within social groups, a trait which in previous eras helped our ancestors survive and belong. Measuring ourselves was once a critical means of navigation, guiding interactions and helping one avoid danger or exclusion. However, this ancient mechanism has been twisted by the complexities of the modern world. Now, instead of offering clarity, it often breeds confusion, envy, and isolation. Imagine the student who spends evenings scrolling through pictures of supposed classmates living their best lives, convinced she's perpetually behind. Or the dedicated parent who quietly aches when other families seem happier or more successful, no matter how hard he tries. Each snapshot, each story, becomes a silent benchmark, creating an unspoken standard few can actually reach. The subconscious urge to keep score amplifies our shortcomings, making us painfully aware of what we lack instead of what we possess. It is here, within this pervasive cycle, that the real damage begins. Most people do not realize how deeply comparison can burrow into their identity, shaping not just fleeting thoughts but self-perception and even long-term mental health. World-renowned therapists caution that consistent exposure to social comparison distorts reality, leading people to undervalue their unique journeys and achievements. It's a mental trap that feels nearly impossible to resist, yet few openly discuss its true harm. Instead, the internal dialogue plays on repeat. You're not thin enough, wealthy enough, smart enough, or accomplished enough. Each comparison tightens its grip, whispering that happiness is always just out of reach, sitting with someone else. As you read these words, perhaps they tug at a familiar ache, a memory of feeling like the outsider, never good enough despite all effort. If so, you are not alone. This trap is set for everyone, hidden in plain sight, an unseen obstacle on the path to wholeness. Yet, recognizing its presence is the first bold step toward breaking free and reclaiming your narrative. The trap of comparison exerts a subtle but relentless hold on our emotional lives. Every time we measure ourselves against another, our emotions bend to the outcome. If we perceive ourselves as falling short, shame and disappointment seep in, often leading to a persistent, low-grade sense of sadness that can taint even our happiest moments. Recent studies from leading psychological institutions report a sharp increase in self-critical inner dialogue, from whispers of inadequacy to the harsh voices of self-rejection, among individuals exposed to frequent comparative situations. One young professional shares how the sight of a peer's career milestones online would leave her spiraling for days, unable to enjoy personal victories that had seemed so significant only moments before. This is the heartbreak of living in the shadow of others. Each encounter with success that is not our own feels like an accusation, a proof of our failures, narrowing our field of view to things we lack, while blinding us to all we have accomplished. These unrelenting comparisons do more than dampen joy, they deeply distort our decision-making. Each day, small and large choices are tainted by the desire to measure up. People shy away from bold new paths for fear of falling short, or take on endeavors just to prove themselves to an imagined audience. A once passionate artist is left paralyzed by the thought that their work might never be as celebrated as a peer's, so their creativity is silenced before it's fully voiced. This craving for external validation, constantly reinforced by the comparative mind, rewires goals and priorities, making authenticity feel like a risk not worth taking. The psychological term approval addiction is not hyperbole but a clinical truth. Researchers have documented a link between recurring comparison and a deterioration in self-agency. Decisions begin to reflect what the world wants, not what the heart deeply desires. The relentless quest to keep up, according to a foundational study in the Journal of Social and Clinical Psychology, leads to chronic stress responses and can tip a vulnerable mind toward anxiety and, in some cases, even depressive disorders. Relationships do not escape unscathed. Social connections, once sources of support and warmth, are filtered through the lens of competition and insecurity. Jealousy breeds resentment. Genuine celebration for others' achievements grows sour, eroding bonds that once felt secure. Countless people find themselves withholding joy for a friend's engagement, job offer, or personal success because it unwittingly turns a mirror on their own perceived deficiencies. This reaction is not a sign of moral failure, but rather the predictable outcome of a comparative culture. Family gatherings, friendly lunches, or moments intended for celebration become battlegrounds for hidden wounds instead. The energy invested in envying or resenting others consumes the space required to nurture love, kindness, and support, leaving relationships brittle and hollow. At its root, the reason people fall for this trap is woven into our nature. We are social organisms, craving recognition and belonging. The lure of comparison is the hope that someone else's shining moment can light our own path, that if we meet invisible standards, we too will be chosen and cherished. Yet this is an illusion, a promise that always demands more, but never delivers real fulfillment. Instead, each cycle of comparison corrodes self-esteem. Individuals find themselves stuck in a loop. No matter how hard they try or what they achieve, the benchmark just moves higher. The sense of inadequacy remains untouched. This downward spiral happens slowly, rarely noticed until it feels almost permanent. If the emotion of anxiety or longing as you read these scenarios feels familiar, know that the weight of comparison is not just yours to hold. It is a shared burden in a world that has quietly normalized such suffering. As we enter the next section, we'll illuminate the subtle but telling warning signs of this struggle, ones that are so easily mistaken for ordinary life that many overlook them entirely. The manifestations of the comparison trap appear in many subtle and overt ways, often disguising themselves as harmless thoughts or ordinary habits. Yet the damage builds quietly, weaving unrest into the fabric of daily living. Consider the office worker who starts each morning by scrolling through updates from seemingly more successful colleagues. As she watches their rapid promotions and accomplishments, unease shadows her day, silently questioning her every achievement. Instead of appreciating her steady progress and competence, anxiety over imagined shortcomings distorts her self-worth. Days turn to weeks, and she notices herself hesitating in meetings, her voice growing softer, her participation shrinking, convinced she can never measure up. Over time, the joy she once found in work is replaced with dread and self-doubt, demonstrating how comparison can erode confidence and ambition from within. A different but equally destructive scenario unfolds in intimate relationships. One young man, Ethan, grows increasingly distant from his partner after frequently comparing their relationship to those highlighted by friends online. He studies staged images of candlelit dinners and anniversaries, mistaking these moments for proof of deeper love or compatibility. Slowly, genuine affection turns into scrutiny. innocent imperfections become sources of disappointment. Instead of fostering closeness, the relentless inner commentary plants suspicion and dissatisfaction where trust once grew. Such cycles sap relationships of their vitality and breed insecurity that can fester beneath the surface, leaving partners to wonder why the effortless joy they crave always seems just out of reach. Family life, too, reveals distinct patterns of the comparison trap's grip. Imagine a parent relentlessly measuring their children's grades, athletic performance, or social achievements against peers. Each perceived shortfall triggers frustration and worry, channeling anxiety not only into harsh self-judgment, but also onto their children, fueling further dysfunction. Over the years, children may internalize this pattern, perpetuating a generational cycle of self-doubt and conditional love. The drive for external approval, inherited and enacted, burdens families with anxiety and resentment that rarely gets acknowledged for what it is, a byproduct of chronic comparison. Signs of the comparison trap surface in countless mundane moments. It's the restlessness that follows an inspiring story, suddenly tinged with envy rather than motivation. It's a reluctance to celebrate your successes because they seem small next to someone else's triumphs. It's the persistent inner monologue that evaluates your worth in the harsh light of what others have or pretend to be. For many, these experiences become so normalized that they fade into the background of everyday consciousness, hidden yet powerful barriers to self-acceptance and contentment. The ability to recognize these patterns is not just an intellectual exercise, it is the vital first step toward untangling their hold. To witness your own mind in the act, to name comparison as it happens, is to reclaim power previously lost to the murky shadows of habit and expectation. Only with awareness can space arrive for genuine change. This is the gateway to healing, to admit, with clarity and self-compassion, that you are not less simply because you are different, and that the standards set by others need not define you. As this chapter closes, ask yourself, have you seen these patterns reflected in your life? Do the scenarios resonate with your own story or someone you care about? By paying attention to these inner warning signs, you are taking the most crucial and courageous step toward healing: awareness. In the next chapter, we will venture deeper into the subtle addiction to others' approval and how it fuels the comparison trap, laying the foundation for practical solutions and lasting recovery. If this exploration has stirred something within you, remember to connect with Mindset Liberation. Reflect on your thoughts, and if you wish, share your reflections to inspire community and growth for yourself and others. Recognizing the shape of this mental health struggle is the key to regaining your autonomy, and the path forward is just beginning. Chapter 2: Breaking Approval Addiction. Approval can feel like oxygen, essential and addicting. Yet what if the sweetest approval is the one you give yourself, unchained from the ever-changing estimations of others? The craving for external validation lies at the heart of comparison, quietly programming us to look outward for permission to feel worthy. The urge to please is deeply rooted in human experience, with evolutionary psychologists explaining that our ancestors depended on group acceptance for survival. Over time, this primal instinct has mutated in the modern world, driving people to chase applause and affirmation in infinite forms, through social media likes, workplace praise, and the subtle nods of approval from peers. This undercurrent is so powerful that research shows most people would rather silence their opinions or mask their differences than risk disappointing someone whose approval they desire. Clinical studies reveal that today, over 70% of adults admit to worrying excessively about how they are perceived by others, even at the expense of their own happiness. Modern technology and social networks throw fuel on these ancient fires, creating a world where approval operates around the clock. People engineer their online personas to maximize positive feedback, often sacrificing authenticity to be accepted. For example, consider Rachel, a talented writer who slowly transformed her passion for storytelling into a performance meant for likes and comments. Each piece she shared became less about honest expression and more about guessing what would be most approved of by her digital audience. The thrill of approval faded quickly, replaced by the anxiety that the next post might not measure up. She found herself exhausted and disconnected from her roots, realizing one day that each like, heart, and comment only deepened a hunger nothing external could really satisfy. This is the hallmark of approval addiction, a seductive force that temporarily soothes but ultimately deepens insecurity. The endless pursuit creates what psychologist Dr. David Burns calls the approval trap, a cycle where fleeting comfort from others' praise is followed by a hollow emptiness, spurring the search to begin anew. Fortunately, there is another way, one that puts your sense of worth back in your own hands. Breaking approval addiction is not about isolating yourself or ignoring valid feedback. Rather, it's about nurturing a robust sense of your own values and making conscious, self-respecting choices. It's the difference between living your life to impress and living to express your truest self. When you internalize the source of your worth, everything changes. Experts have demonstrated that individuals who cultivate self-acceptance and self-compassion experience dramatically lower levels of anxiety, higher life satisfaction, and more authentic relationships. You have the innate ability to redraw the boundaries of what truly matters, placing your own self-respect at the center of your decisions. This chapter is about that leap, a bold pivot away from external scorecards and toward the inner validation that never wavers. Imagine the relief of releasing the burden of others' expectations and stepping into a space where your worth is not up for debate. As we move forward, remember that the journey of breaking approval addiction does not happen overnight, but with intention and hope, you have the power to shape a life governed not by applause, but by inner calm and authenticity. The possibility for transformation lies within your grasp, and every step you take is an act of self-liberation. The process of breaking approval addiction is remarkably effective because it uproots the dependency that gives the comparison trap its power. Instead of measuring one's value by shifting external standards, this method focuses on building an inner foundation of self-acceptance and clarity of personal values. When a person can identify and affirm their own worth irrespective of external judgment, the endless cycle of seeking affirmation begins to dissolve. The mind recovers balance, and decision-making gradually becoming guided by what feels most true and fulfilling, rather than by reflexive people-pleasing or fear of isolation. Scientific studies in cognitive behavioral therapy have found that individuals who practice self-validation show significantly reduced symptoms of anxiety and depression compared to those who remain stuck in approval-seeking behavior. The mind, no longer hooked on the adrenaline of someone else's nod, gains space for genuine reflection and self-motivation. Research from leading psychologists, including Dr. Kristen Neff in the field of self-compassion, has demonstrated the transformative effects of learning to speak kindly to oneself and to reframe negative self-talk. Those who commit to regular practices, such as mindful self-reflection, emotional journaling, and values clarification, are statistically more resilient in the face of criticism or indifference from others. These interventions recalibrate the brain's reward center, allowing internal fulfillment to replace fleeting boosts from social approval. To grasp this on a human level, consider Elias, a graphic designer whose career was built around pleasing demanding clients and fitting into fast-moving design trends. For years, his sense of accomplishment lasted only as long as the latest round of praises. Rejection, or worse, being overlooked, stung so deeply he would spiral into doubt and fear about whether he belonged in his profession at all. After suffering mounting stress and lost passion, Elias began a journey of change on the advice of a trusted mentor. He started identifying the values that mattered most to him: artistic integrity, curiosity, and growth. With practice, he developed rituals of daily affirmation and made deliberate choices to center fulfillment in the creative process itself rather than in the subsequent reactions it received. The shift was gradual but unmistakable. Projects once feared for their riskiness became sources of excitement, not anxiety. If a design fell flat or a client wasn't satisfied, Elias learned to separate his core value from fleeting outcomes. Instead of abandoning doubt-driven projects, he grew more passionate, more innovative, and even rediscovered the joy that led him to his work in the first place. There is seriousness in acknowledging how difficult but life-changing this inward pivot can be. Breaking approval addiction means recognizing years of deeply conditioned reactions, allowing yourself moments of discomfort as you relearn what truly matters. The urgency here is clear. The longer one lives for other people's applause, the further they move from the authenticity of their own desires and strengths. Self-respect becomes an unyielding anchor, unshaken by shifting tides of external opinion. With scientific proof and human experience as your foundation, the journey forward is not only possible, but necessary. This is not a halfway path. It demands courage, persistence, and daily commitment. But in exchange, it grants freedom from an exhausting dependence, opening the door to lasting self-worth. Shifting from the relentless pursuit of outside approval to a life shaped by your own values is both an act of courage and a daily practice. The key to success is in taking small, committed steps, actions you can blend into the flow of ordinary moments that accumulate over time into a profound transformation. The first movement away from approval addiction begins with conscious awareness. Start each day by noticing the subtle situations where you instinctively seek validation, perhaps a lingering need for praise from a supervisor, an urge to garner likes for an online post, or a silent hope for affirmation after sharing a vulnerable opinion. Write these down as they happen. By transforming unconscious reactions into clear observations, you gently interrupt the old pattern before it becomes automatic. Next, develop a personal affirmation ritual tailor-made to reinforce your intrinsic value. Pick a time, maybe right after you wake up or during an afternoon pause, to repeat words that anchor you to your authentic self. Say out loud, "My worth is not determined by others' approval. I honor what I believe, value, and contribute." It might feel awkward at first, dismissing years of learned people-pleasing, but consistency turns these phrases into the foundation of a new mental narrative. Journaling further amplifies this effect. When someone's feedback triggers anxiety or self-doubt, open your notebook and record your reaction. Ask yourself, is this criticism or absence of praise really a measure of my character or my work's value, or is it simply one point of view? As you work through this process, note small victories, times when you manage to act despite fear of disapproval. These not only boost your motivation, but help rewire the connection between your actions and your sense of accomplishment. Another powerful exercise is what psychologists call values clarification. List out core qualities that define who you want to be, such as creativity, honesty, empathy, or perseverance. Reflect on a recent decision or conversation. Was it rooted in your values or shaped by someone else's expectations? Each time you examine your choices with this lens, you practice returning authority to yourself. Over time, these moments begin to pile up, giving you a clear track record of authenticity even in spaces that previously fueled insecurity or indecision. Introduce brief mindfulness pauses throughout your week. When you feel the itchy craving for reassurance, take a slow breath and recenter. Name 3 things about your effort, attitude, or intention that you respect regardless of the response you get. With regular practice, this brief check-in becomes a lifeline, especially in tense moments where you might have once defaulted to self-censorship or subtle self-betrayal. As you celebrate progress, no matter how modest, trace the difference in how you feel internally. Is acting from your own motivations leading to a quieter mind, less tension in your body, or a spark of genuine pride? These small wins are clues that you are moving from dependency on approval to self-sustaining growth. Remember, every step, no matter how small, builds resilience and inner security. With this foundation, you now stand ready to tackle even deeper patterns underlying comparison and self-worth. The next chapter will guide you through the transformation of how you define yourself, redirecting your assessment of value from borrowed standards to ones you create. If these steps resonate, reflect on your journey so far and consider sharing what's shifted for you or any insights gained. Your participation and feedback directly join the mission of mindset liberation, strengthening this community of growth. Strengthening your inner compass is the bravest act of all, and the path ahead is filled with even more powerful strategies to claim the life and mindset you truly deserve. Chapter 3: Redefining Your Self-Worth. If you want true freedom, you must reclaim the power to define your own worth. The next stage of your transformation begins here, shifting the foundation of your self-esteem from shaky external proof to the solid rock of your own choosing. For too long, most people have instinctively linked their value to fleeting markers, titles, possessions, attractiveness, or the opinions of others. Yet evidence from psychological studies and countless personal stories reveals a profound truth. Self-worth does not need proof from the outside world to be real, stable, and transformative. This chapter invites you to step out of the well-worn rut of societal standards and into a life shaped by your own unique measurement of value. The roots of externally based self-worth go deep, often established in childhood through praise, comparison, or family rules around success. Over time, these messages solidify, making it seem as if worth is earned through accomplishment or compliance. Dr. Brené Brown, a renowned researcher on vulnerability and shame, discovered that individuals who measure their self-worth internally live with a greater sense of confidence and joy, regardless of how society chooses to label them. In fact, a longitudinal study tracked thousands of adults and found that those who actively practiced self-affirmation and self-valuing habits were far more resilient during stress, less likely to experience depressive episodes, and significantly more satisfied with life. Relatable real-life examples underscore how ordinary but powerful this shift can be. Think of Maya, who for years believed her value was tied directly to her role as a high performer at work and a model parent at home. The moment either facade cracked, a missed promotion, a disappointed child, her sense of self unraveled. With the help of a mentor, Maya started questioning this externally driven standard. She was encouraged to remember moments in her life that brought genuine joy or pride, even when no one else was watching or applauding. As she did this, Maya discovered a new anchor. Her value was rooted in her kindness, her integrity, her commitment to growth, not in accolades that appeared or vanished with circumstance. Over months, her confidence grew, untethered to volatile outside conditions, and for the first time, Maya felt unshakably grounded no matter what storms appeared in her social or professional orbit. This radical act, redesigning self-worth from the inside out, is a skill you can learn, no matter how ingrained the old patterns feel. Self-defined worth is a renewable resource. The more you affirm and embody it, the less fragile and more expansive it becomes. Remember, the inner terrain of your worth can be cleared, rebuilt, and treasured by you alone. The next steps on your journey will offer concrete tools to help you identify, nurture, and ultimately trust in a self-worth that can weather any storm. With each insight and practice, you claim a building block toward unshakable confidence and a mindset truly liberated from outside verdicts. The power is, and has always been, yours to define. Redefining your self-worth from within is uniquely effective because it targets the root of personal instability, transforming self-esteem from a fragile reflection into an unshakable core. Historically, people who rely on external achievements or others' approval for their sense of worth often find themselves riding an emotional roller coaster, elated by praise but crippled by criticism, constantly fearful that failure or vulnerability will render them unworthy. By contrast, when you turn inward to construct self-worth according to personally chosen values, you insulate your identity from the chaos and unpredictability of external validation. This approach is not simply wishful thinking. It is a method painstakingly supported by research and lived experiences that prove true resilience and happiness emerge from self-acceptance and inner standards rather than outward success or comparison. The science underpinning this shift is robust. In a landmark series of studies, self-compassion expert Dr. Kristen Neff identified that people with self-defined worth exhibit less anxiety, more consistent moods, and healthier responses to setbacks. Participants who practiced self-affirmation exercises demonstrated measurable drops in cortisol, the body's stress hormone, and maintained productivity and creativity even when faced with failure. The internal definition of worth becomes, in a very real sense, a psychological immune system. Instead of absorbing every negative opinion or disappointment as a personal indictment, individuals with internally anchored self-worth interpret these events as isolated, often external factors. challenges to be navigated rather than statements of who they are at the core. This adaptive mechanism dramatically reduces vulnerability to anxiety and depression, promoting stability and motivation regardless of what's happening outside. The power of this approach is also illuminated by the stories of people who have undergone this transformation. Take Hassan, once a star athlete whose self-confidence depended entirely on victories and applause. His sense of importance soared while he won, but injuries and losses plunged him into despair, making every day a test of whether or not he deserved respect or happiness. When his career abruptly ended, Hassan felt invisible and worthless, spiraling into a deep mental health crisis. Through therapy and reflection, Hassan began building a new self-assessment system focused on his resilience, loyalty, humor, and capacity for growth, the traits he had once admired in others but never credited in himself. This redefinition did not erase pain, but it reoriented the lens through which he saw setbacks. He could now view both loss and success as experiences, not as definitions. Over time, Hassan built relationships, work, and routines on the foundation of these self-chosen qualities. The result was a far deeper happiness and resistance to anxiety than he had known even in his athletic prime. This shift is urgent and necessary because the outside world is unreliable. It changes, forgets, judges harshly, or rewards arbitrarily. No external circumstance, good or bad, can ever provide lasting peace if the core belief in personal worth is shaky or borrowed. True stability grows only from a self-defined center, making setbacks survivable and successes genuinely enjoyable. Anchoring your worth within is not a luxury or a distant ideal. It is a vital, life-defining skill, offering a path to freedom in a world otherwise ruled by fickle approval and endless comparison. Redefining your self-worth is a courageous act, and there are clear, practical steps you can take right now to begin rewriting your internal narrative. The first step is to become radically honest with yourself about your current definitions of worth. Take a quiet moment and ask, what have I been using to measure my value? Write these down without judgment, whether they are achievements, the opinions of certain people, physical appearance, or social status. This is not an exercise in blame, but in awareness. In seeing where your standards have come from, you are starting to seize control. Once you've mapped out your current sources of self-worth, the next step is to actively challenge and reshape them. Identify qualities you admire most in yourself or in others. Resilience, curiosity, patience, sense of humor, kindness, creativity, or persistence. Begin to record moments when you embody these qualities, whether or not anyone else notices. If you acted patiently under stress at work or remained kind even when tired, write it down as a win. The aim is to form a list of evidence that your value exists independently from traditional metrics or fleeting results. Doing this daily, even for only a week, starts to shift the narrative from, I am worthwhile if I succeed, to, I am worthwhile because I am true to who I am. A powerful mind shift to reinforce this practice is to treat failures and disappointments as neutral data, not a reflection of your identity. The next time you encounter a setback, pause and describe the event without harsh internal commentary. Instead of saying, I failed, so I'm not enough, reframe it to, this didn't go as planned, but it's an experience from which I can grow. Each time you withhold that automatic critical judgment, it becomes easier to believe that your value is constant, separate from outcome or opinion. Try this intentionally the next time you feel regret or embarrassment. Use the moment as proof of self-compassion in action. Anchoring your self-worth also involves treating yourself with the kindness you'd give to a friend. Each day, practice offering yourself a word or gesture of reassurance, a gentle touch to your heart, a calm reminder that your worth is not earned or revoked, but simply present, with no conditions attached. Celebrate these moments. They're small wins that rewires your expectations about where value comes from. The more you do this, the stronger the internal voice becomes, one that defends you in harsh times instead of joining in outside criticism. You do not have to do this alone. Track your progress in a journal, mark small victories, or even share your journey with a trusted confidant who believes in your new definition of worth. Each act of loyalty to yourself builds momentum until one morning you realize you no longer need to consult others to confirm that you matter, you already know it within. With each step, you draw closer to a confident, enduring sense of self-worth that no one and nothing can easily uproot. As you practice these exercises, pay special attention to how daily life shifts. Notice increased calm during challenges, freedom in your decisions, or unexpected joy in routine moments. These are signs your foundation is strengthening. The journey of self-worth leads naturally to a life rooted in authenticity. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to own your unique path, drawing on your new inner strength to forge a direction unshaken by the crowd. Take a moment to celebrate your progress so far, and if this guidance resonates, continue connecting with Mindset Liberation. Share your thoughts, offer suggestions, or simply take a moment for reflection. Your commitment to redefining your worth is carving out a powerful new reality, one choice at a time. Chapter 4. Owning your unique path. No two lives are meant to unfold in the same way, yet countless people surrender their journey to someone else's map, silencing their instincts to fit beside others on a crowded, competing road. The solution at the heart of this chapter, a bold return to your unique path, is more than self-assertion. It's the blueprint for an authentic life shaped by your own evolving sense of purpose. From childhood, society conditions us to look around rather than within, guiding our choices subtly or directly through comparisons and imitative behaviors. Researchers from Stanford University have found that by age 12, most children have already absorbed the message that blending in ensures comfort and safety. But for many, this entrenched conformity morphs into a pattern of suppressing one's genuine self for decades. The cost of this hidden surrender shows up everywhere. People settle into careers that feel hollow, postpone creative dreams, or betray deeply held beliefs for applause and acceptance, never pausing to consider what a life guided from the inside might actually yield. The epidemic of lost direction is felt acutely as we age. A global Gallup poll recently revealed that over 2/3 of adults feel disengaged from their work, citing a faint but persistent sense that they are not meant for this path. The feeling isn't rare, it's the quiet norm. Peer-reviewed psychological studies further show a link between persistent comparison with others, timelines measuring marriages, promotions, possessions, or even hobbies, and a reduction in overall life satisfaction and resilience. When you live on a borrowed path, every perceived milestone you miss is another weight on your spirit, stoking anxiety and the urge to catch up, yet somehow always falling behind. Yet while the pressure is real, so is the alternative. The decision to step off the well-trodden highway and discover what makes your path strikingly your own. The power to claim your course rests within you, even if doubts and fears sometimes whisper otherwise. Individuals who find the courage to honor their unique story often testify to profound transformation. Mia, for example, spent years in a high-stakes corporate environment, slowly unraveling beneath the persistent anxiety of chasing metrics that never felt meaningful. At her most uncertain, the moments other people celebrated, her promotions, her pay raises, felt strangely empty. With the support of a mentor, Mia gave herself permission to step away and revisit the passions she had set aside for convenience. Today, she channels her energy into teaching and advocacy, reporting an inner satisfaction and vitality she never experienced in her previous line of work. Most importantly, Mia speaks to the contagious effect of authenticity. As she owned her path, her friends and family noticed the difference and felt inspired to reflect honestly on their own lives. The invitation at the core of this chapter is both simple and radical. Let go of the borrowed directions, halt the relentless comparisons, and begin to move forward by aligning with what truly matters to you. No one else's definition of success or happiness can substitute for what you build with conscious intention. Taking back your life story is not only possible, but profoundly rewarding. Here, you become the author and the explorer, trusting that the questions you ask and the course you chart are worthy in themselves. This is where a meaningful, sustaining confidence takes root, and you have everything you need to begin. Choosing to own your unique path is more than just a feel-good tactic. It is a scientifically validated method, proven to restore meaning, boost resilience, and foster lasting fulfillment. This approach works because it interrupts the exhausting process of adapting, performing, or comparing yourself to others, replacing these habits with the internal clarity that only alignment with your own values can bring. In breaking away from external blueprints, you invite authenticity, a key ingredient recognized by psychologists as pivotal for well-being. Research led by Dr. Michael Kernis, a clinical psychologist who has spent decades studying authenticity in mental health, indicates that individuals who consciously direct their lives in accordance with their core beliefs score significantly lower on measures of anxiety and depression. By honoring personal intuition and rejecting the pressure to mold yourself to fit social expectations, you reduce internal conflict and create a nurturing soil in which true self-esteem and courage can flourish. The effectiveness of owning your path is also deeply rooted in neuroscientific findings. The human brain thrives on a sense of purpose and autonomy. When you make choices that align with intrinsic motivations, meaningful pursuits chosen because they matter to you, the brain releases neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, the very chemicals responsible for feelings of satisfaction and happiness. Conversely, when actions are dictated primarily by external approval or comparison, research shows chronic activation of the brain's stress and threat systems, leading to burnout, restlessness, and emotional numbness over time. The process of stepping onto your own path is literally a recalibration of your mind's survival and reward systems. As you move closer to authenticity, you not only quell anxiety, but set the stage for a naturally motivated, emotionally rich life. Real-life stories drive home the power of this transformation. Consider the journey of Lucas, a physician who spent his early adulthood absorbing expectations, top grades, a prestigious medical degree, and a high-paying specialization no one ever questioned. Though competent, he felt directionless. The moments of pride expected after reaching major milestones failed to arrive. Burnout and a creeping sense of detachment left him doubting not only his efforts, but his very identity. The breakthrough came when Lucas allowed himself a season of introspection and honest dialogue. Slowly, he discovered his true fascination in medicine. Connecting with children as a pediatrician, using play and communication, not just diagnostics and procedures. Risking criticism, Lucas left behind his lucrative post for pediatric work in a community clinic. Within months, he described a renewed sense of energy, warmth, and connection, one that spread beyond his working hours and into his personal life. Over time, his resilience grew. Setbacks that once felt intolerable became simply new challenges. Owning this new direction didn't make Lucas's days easier in every respect, but it secured a wellspring of purpose and joy he never found while following someone else's version of success. This method carries an urgent relevance because the pressures to conform and compare do not relent with time. In fact, they often intensify. Without proactive realignment, many people drift through years feeling lost and fragmented, missing out on the vibrancy and stability that can only come from acting as the main character in their own lives. The intensity of reclaiming your path lies in its promise that fulfillment, courage, and genuine happiness emerge when you decide again and again to walk a road only you can name. The journey to owning your unique path begins the moment you decide that your story matters as much as, if not more than, anyone else's expectations. This is not a dramatic overhaul, but a steady process of quiet choices that accumulate into profound change. The first step is to deliberately reflect on the roles and directions you have adopted throughout your life. Set aside a pocket of uninterrupted time and, with a journal or even just a notepad, write about where the main influences on your decisions have come from. Were they shaped by family traditions, cultural whispers, peer pressure, or fleeting social trends? Mapping these origins with kindness, not blame, gives you insight into how certain paths could have veered away from your true desires. Awareness is your launch pad, and already it starts to dissolve the grip of comparison. Next, begin to articulate your own definition of fulfillment and success. Ask yourself, without outside opinions, what activities or experiences make you feel alive and deeply yourself. This could be anything from pursuing art for art's sake, devoting your career to service, finding balance between work and relationships, or exploring unscripted parts of the world. Document at least 3 personal values or passions and identify the smallest practical step you can take in their direction. It might be as subtle as carving out 30 minutes for a neglected hobby, volunteering locally, reaching out to an inspiring connection, or setting a healthy boundary as an act of self-respect. These actions are not about instant transformation, but about signaling to yourself that your choices belong to you. With every step, however small, you gain courage and evidence that a self-guided life is possible. A helpful mindset shift for this process is to stop viewing unconventional decisions as risks and start seeing them as acts of truest alignment. The discomfort that arises is not failure or danger. It is the natural growing pain of stepping off a well-beaten, crowded road and forming a path where your footsteps matter most. Whenever you feel hesitation about a move that aligns with your authentic priorities, pause and ask yourself, is this discomfort the sign of self-betrayal or proof I'm finally listening to my inner compass? Reframing these moments transfers power back into your hands and reinforces that each deviation is a small victory for honoring your individuality. Try practicing a weekly review where you acknowledge every single decision, no matter how brief, that honored your own direction. Did you voice a preference, choose an activity that excited you, advocate for a need, or admit a dream openly? List these out. Reviewing your progress not only celebrates small wins, but cements confidence for bigger leaps. Momentum is built in these incremental shifts, and soon enough, what once seemed impossible becomes your new normal. Remember, change is cumulative. The quiet courage to choose your way today fuels a lifetime of authentic living tomorrow. Notice how the heavier emotions of jealousy or inadequacy start to fade the more present you are on your own track, no longer distracted by races you never wanted to run. You have everything you need within you. This work is about listening, trusting, and determining again and again that your path is worthy by virtue of being your own. Next, we will explore how to develop inner confidence that sustains you in the face of inevitable doubts and challenges, turning your newfound direction into steadfast conviction. Take a moment to celebrate what you have begun, and if you find inspiration or clarity, share your reflections or suggestions with the Mindset Liberation community. Your journey toward authenticity is making you stronger, and the best is still ahead. Let's continue together, step by purposeful step. Chapter 5. Building Inner Confidence. Confidence is not an inherited trait reserved for a lucky few, but an inner force built steadily through conscious choices and new ways of thinking. At the heart of overcoming comparison and reclaiming the narrative of your life lies the ability to stand tall, regardless of circumstance or the swirling opinions of others. Confidence born from within does not depend on validation or applause. It grows stronger precisely because it is anchored in your own steady self-regard and learned resilience. The art of building inner confidence is both ancient and incredibly relevant today. Societies have always admired those who stride forward with a quiet sense of certainty and trust in themselves. Yet the path to cultivating such confidence often seems shrouded in mystery or loftily unattainable. In truth, the origins are found in everyday actions, decisions, and habits rather than unreachable acts of heroism. Modern psychology reveals just how universally needed inner confidence is in today's world. According to a survey from the American Psychological Association, up to 85% of people admit that self-doubt holds them back from pursuing goals, expressing opinions, or asserting personal boundaries. The stress generated by constantly assessing one's social standing or performance is a major driver of anxiety and unhappiness, with perfectionistic comparison cited as a leading cause. Fortunately, researchers such as Dr. Albert Bandura, renowned for pioneering self-efficacy theory, have shown that confidence is built one experience at a time by facing challenges, mastering small skills, and changing self-sabotaging narratives. It is not a prize at the finish line, but a companion that develops as you act, learn, and endure setbacks without surrendering your sense of self-respect. Stories from real people reinforce this truth. Take the example of Maya, a project manager who long admired her colleagues' ease in meetings, but felt invisible when it came to sharing her own ideas. Every time she deferred, her inner critic grew louder, cementing the belief that she was not meant to lead. When a mentor encouraged Maya to prepare thoughtfully and commit to speaking up, even in small ways, she discovered the exhilaration and growth that came from incremental progress. Each moment of courage, regardless of how it was received, became evidence that she was far more capable than her fear suggested. As she focused on personal learning and inner growth rather than external approval, her confidence transformed from shaky performance to a stable, empowering resource. This is the promise. Inner confidence is a practical, learnable skill that anyone can foster, regardless of starting point or past failures. It is forged in daily choices, by doing difficult things, by standing up for your truth, by celebrating small wins and learning from every misstep rather than hiding from them. When you consciously practice these steps, you no longer need to grasp for fleeting reassurance because the conviction you seek is quietly expanding from within. The hope of this chapter is to show you that courage is not about silencing fear, but about building faith in your ability to act and grow, even when doubt lingers in the background. It is never too late to begin shaping this core strength. It belongs to you, patiently waiting to be claimed and made real through honest effort and unwavering self-acceptance. The effectiveness of building inner confidence lies in its power to break the cycle of self-doubt and comparison at its source. Unlike fleeting achievements or relentless seeks for affirmation, the internal process of cultivating confidence fundamentally changes how you relate to every circumstance, triumph, and setback. Scientific evidence consistently shows that individuals who focus on strengthening self-efficacy, the belief in their ability to handle challenges, are far less likely to succumb to the anxiety and paralysis that come with constant comparison. Dr. Albert Bandura's decades of research demonstrate that true confidence is not born from empty praise, but instead from accumulated experiences where people choose to act, learn, make mistakes, and keep going. His studies show that individuals who face manageable risks, especially when the outcome is uncertain, rewire their brains to expect resourcefulness and eventual success. Incrementally, these earned successes replace the old script of doubt with a robust sense of, "I can handle this," providing powerful resistance to internal or external criticism. Neurologically, practicing small, courageous acts stimulates brain regions tied to motivation, reward, and self-control, particularly the prefrontal cortex. With repetition, the brain actually becomes more adept at overriding fear and stress. This results in quieter self-criticism, reduced emotional volatility, and greater willingness to pursue new experiences. For people who grew up feeling invisible, unworthy, or marginalized, the transformative nature of inner confidence can be life-changing. Consider the journey of Andre, who spent much of his youth overshadowed by louder siblings and never believed his perspective mattered. Each time he remained silent, his conviction of unworthiness deepened, and by adulthood, the thought of speaking up in meetings or social events filled him with dread. Tired of living on the sidelines, Andre committed to a new practice. He would share one idea each day in a work setting, no matter how insignificant it might seem. The initial discomfort was nearly overwhelming. However, over time, coworkers began to respond positively, acknowledging his contributions and even seeking his input. But the true breakthrough came not from their validation, but from Andre's realization that he could weather awkwardness, puzzled looks, and even disagreement without shrinking. He learned to see feedback as neutral information, not judgment, and began to trust that he had something valuable to offer simply by virtue of participating. The urgency of this method is unmistakable because building inner confidence acts as a shield, one that supports authenticity and reduces the pull of comparison, regardless of how others respond. Without a secure inner base, every reaction or perceived slight has the power to derail focus, cause shame, or fuel the inner critic. Yet people with developed self-efficacy greet failure or awkward moments as inherent to learning rather than evidence of a fixed incompetence. This is not a passive change, but an intense, conscious investment in your own growth. The stakes are high because settling for borrowed confidence leaves you vulnerable to every setback, perpetually seeking proof of worth in other people's eyes. With a sturdy internal core, life's unpredictability becomes less threatening. Mistakes no longer signal inadequacy. Instead, they are repurposed as stepping stones to deeper wisdom and resilience. In building inner confidence, you claim your right to belong, contribute, and dare, starting exactly where you are. Building inner confidence is a journey that comes together through intentional, daily actions that may seem small at first, but grow to create lasting change. Begin by identifying one area, no matter how minor, where you typically hesitate or feel self-doubt. This could be speaking up in a meeting, suggesting an idea to friends, or tackling a hobby you've always wanted to try. Take a notebook or open a note on your phone, and at the start of each day, write down a single, clear intention. For example, today, I will share one thought during my team discussion, or I will ask a question in class. By specifying one small, actionable goal, you focus your attention and begin collecting early evidence of your courage. Each time you complete what you set out to do, regardless of the outcome, acknowledge it as a success. Confidence is built this way, by consistently proving to yourself that you can act in spite of your fears. The next step involves reframing your internal dialogue. When you notice the inner critic, the voice that says you aren't capable or shouldn't try, pause and respond as you would to a friend. Instead of letting negative thoughts run unchecked, practice saying, "It's okay to feel uncertain. I'm learning every time I try." Over time, this self-soothing statement disrupts the automatic cycles of self-judgment and teaches your mind that a mistake is not a final verdict on your worth. You'll discover that self-support actually transforms fear into fuel, making repeated acts of courage feel less daunting. To deepen your practice, develop a confidence journal where you record not only what you attempted, but how you felt before and after. Note if you spoke up or completed a challenging task and detail what resulted, but focus just as much on the process as on the outcome. Did your heart race, but you still kept going? Did you feel butterflies, but continued despite them? Write these down. Closely observing your emotions and naming your bravery reinforces the truth that confidence isn't about feeling no fear, but about acting in its presence. After a week or two, look back over your notes. Observe the trend. Are the moments of hesitation shrinking? Does the after-feeling contain more pride or calm? Seeing tangible evidence will reset your self-perception and spur you to bigger challenges. A useful mindset shift to integrate is to celebrate effort as much as result. If you showed up, spoke up, or took a reasonable risk, count it as a success independent of what anyone else said. Share your milestones with a trusted friend or supportive online community for added accountability and encouragement. Each small act of self-assertion is proof you are sculpting a stronger inner foundation, and these victories grow exponentially over time. As your confidence deepens, observe how your opinions become clearer, your body language stronger, and your ability to handle challenges more resilient. These are early signs that comparison is losing its grip and that you're moving toward a life that is resilient from the inside out. You have begun an upward spiral that has no set limit, each step paving the way for personal breakthroughs ahead. In the coming chapter, we'll shift our focus toward embracing progress rather than perfection, teaching you how to sustain growth and motivation even when results are slow or setbacks appear. Your engagement is invaluable on this journey. Share what works for you, offer insights you've learned, or join the Mindset Liberation community to find encouragement and ideas. Every courageous step builds your confidence. The new foundation you are laying will change your experience of every day that follows. Chapter 6. Embracing Progress Over Perfection. The relentless quest for perfection is a trap that quietly drains joy, paralyzes authentic growth, and keeps us locked in cycles of dissatisfaction. This chapter introduces a liberating shift. The power of embracing progress rather than perfection. For so many, the stories we carry about achievement are woven from childhood lessons, cultural myths, and years of comparing ourselves to polished images of flawlessness. Perfection is often held up as the ideal worth striving for, but its real effect is to make every mistake feel catastrophic and every shortfall seem like proof of personal inadequacy. Yet, the secret to genuine fulfillment and resilience lies not in doing everything right the first time or all the time. It lives in the forward motion of steady, imperfect progress. Research from the University of Toronto reveals that nearly 70% of people self-identify as recovering perfectionists, admitting that fear of making mistakes has held them back from trying new things and has led to missed opportunities and chronic stress. Perfectionistic thinking not only limits achievement but also drains motivation, damages self-esteem, and is closely linked to increased anxiety and depression, as shown by studies from the American Psychological Association. These statistics portray just how widespread and quietly damaging the perfection ideal can be. The stories echo in everyday life. The student who will not submit an essay unless she is certain it is flawless, missing out on learning and feedback. The artist whose canvases stack up unfinished because no version feels good enough to share. The aspiring entrepreneur stuck in analysis mode, paralyzed by fear that the first attempt might not be a masterpiece. Yet there is another way, a path proven to be more fulfilling, reachable, and sustainable. Experts in motivation, such as Dr. Carol Dweck, known for her pioneering research on the growth mindset, explain that true achievement and confidence grow from a willingness to make mistakes, to adapt, and to value learning over external validation. Individuals who focus on steady improvement rather than unattainable standards experience increased creativity, greater resilience after setbacks, and a genuine sense of accomplishment that does not require constant comparison. This approach is reinforced not only by scientific studies, but by the lived experiences of millions who, having traded the harsh rules of perfectionism for a gentler commitment to progress, discover their capacity to adapt, enjoy, and thrive despite inevitable mistakes or roadblocks. Consider Anna, who spent years obsessing over every detail in her work, convinced that only flawless performance would earn her respect. Despite her talent, she often hesitated to take on new responsibilities and found herself stuck, exhausted by the weight of her own expectations. The breakthrough came when a mentor encouraged her to track visible progress rather than invisible perfection, to notice growth and celebrate effort, however small. Over months, Anna realized that her willingness to submit work in progress, to experiment without fear, and to openly acknowledge lessons from mistakes was the real source of admiration and self-respect. The shift ignited her potential in ways perfection never could. Every chapter of growth, every imperfect leap, became a story of courage and momentum, not shame or failure. Embracing progress over perfection is a philosophy and a practice that revitalizes learning, strengthens self-worth, and keeps life in motion, always growing, never locked in place. The optimism and hope born from this mindset allow anyone, regardless of past habits, to confidently chart an upward journey. This is the liberating invitation that awaits, to measure your life by movement and transformation, not by a brittle illusion of flawlessness. Shifting the focus from perfection to progress is effective because it fundamentally dismantles the impossible standard that drives anxiety, self-criticism, and paralysis. When you value progress over flawlessness, you redefine success as growth, measured by effort, adaptability, and forward movement, instead of an unbroken string of ideal outcomes. This method works at both a psychological and neurological level. Studies conducted at Stanford University on growth mindset reveal that individuals who see intelligence, talent, and even character as qualities that can be developed are more likely to persist in the face of setbacks, embrace constructive feedback, and derive meaning from challenges rather than regarding them as threats. The brain itself is shown to adapt to this way of thinking. Every small effort or bit of learning actually rewires neural connections, laying down paths that make future coping, creativity, and resilience easier. These effects, documented through neuroscientific research, are not temporary boosts, but cumulative, leading to sustained confidence and motivation across many areas of life. Real-life stories underscore the transformative power of this shift. Take the example of Priya, a software engineer who struggled mightily during her first year at a new job. Each time she hit a bug or made a mistake, her inner critic reacted with crushing disappointment. Her anxiety about being seen as anything less than perfect made her hesitate to ask questions or take initiative. Over time, this fear stifled her creativity and left her feeling isolated at work. The pivotal moment came after a difficult project failed to meet its deadline. Instead of assigning blame, Priya's team leader encouraged everyone to write down what they learned from the experience and each small step of progress made along the way. For the first time, Priya could see her development clearly reflected in the problems she solved, the teamwork she facilitated, and the resilience she showed under pressure. Small wins she had previously ignored became evidence of her capability, and criticism transformed from a threat to an opportunity for learning. As she intentionally began to recognize and record her progress, Priya's work habits transformed. The imperative to always be the best was replaced by the joy of improvement. This approach didn't turn mistakes into triumphs overnight, but it immunized her against spiraling self-blame and gave her the permission to take risks without fear of permanent failure. The sense of relief and renewed energy she cultivated wasn't just personal. Coworkers noticed an enviable adaptability and steadiness under stress. The ability to see value in progress, rather than perfection, became mirrored in deeper connections, more creative solutions, and a willingness to keep pushing boundaries even when outcomes were uncertain. There is an urgency in adopting this solution, because perfectionism has a way of tightening its grip as expectations mount and life brings new, unfamiliar challenges. The longer one measures every step against an unattainable standard, the more power is drained from possibility and self-belief. By anchoring your mindset in progress, not perfection, you inoculate yourself against the toxic cycle of never enough and reawaken the creativity, persistence, and daring that perfectionistic thinking so often stifles. This shift is necessary not only for success, but for well-being and genuine lifelong learning. The act of embracing progress over perfection becomes real the moment you translate this principle into small, deliberate changes. Begin by noting the areas of your life where perfectionistic thinking is most common. This might be your work output, your appearance, family roles, or expectations around learning new skills. Select just one area for your initial focus and commit over the next week to reframing your goal from doing it perfectly to moving forward even if imperfectly. Each time you undertake a task in this arena, set a specific intention such as, "Today, I will focus on learning through this activity, not on flawless execution." By clearly stating your aim, you disrupt the automatic mental cycle that latches onto mistakes as failure. As you move through your task, introduce a progress log, a dedicated notebook, app, or daily note where you record not only successes, but every moment of effort, every mistake made, and most importantly, what you learned as a result. Allow yourself to celebrate these lessons explicitly. Ask, what did I try today that was new? What did I handle better than the time before? At the end of the week, read through these entries and look for evidence of the journey rather than just the destination. The act of documenting your progress builds momentum and provides proof of growth that overpowers your inner perfectionist. Implementing short growth check-ins transforms small efforts into compounding confidence. Each evening or at the end of a project, spend 2 minutes reflecting on questions like, am I further ahead because I made an attempt, even if the result wasn't perfect? Practice acknowledging forward movement, completing a draft, sending a message you'd planned to avoid, cooking a meal without tossing it for being less than restaurant grade. Let these actions stand as victories, not as gaps waiting to be fixed. In moments when the urge for perfection feels intense, pause and breathe, asking yourself, is the lesson I'm learning more valuable in the long run than a perfect score today? Over time, these pauses rewire your brain to expect certainty not from a flawless outcome, but from a reliable forward stride. It is also important to openly share your journey with a friend, coach, or community, allowing yourself to be witnessed and encouraged for your attempts at growth rather than just your results. If self-criticism creeps in, try imagining how you would respond to a friend in the exact same situation. Speak to yourself with the same patience and emphasis on effort and learning, reinforcing your commitment to progress. As the days pass, you'll notice your frustration softening into curiosity, your fear transforming into eagerness, and your accomplishments, large and small, adding up on their own. The perfectionist's weight grows lighter as momentum grows, until progress feels not just acceptable, but genuinely exciting. Looking ahead, the ability to move forward imperfectly opens the door to even greater freedom, the freedom to live authentically and bravely, regardless of what others might expect. In the next chapter, we'll uncover how to translate all this progress into a life lived transparently and unapologetically, far beyond the limits of comparison. If you're discovering the power of progress for yourself, reflect on your journey with mindset liberation, share your insights and observations, and encourage others to take that first imperfect step too. Progress is your new proof that growth is always possible, so keep going, one real, hopeful step at a time. Chapter 7. Living Authentically and Freely. Freedom is not found in chasing others' expectations, but in the quiet, exhilarating act of showing up as your true self. Living authentically is the ultimate reward for letting go of comparison, and it marks the point where self-acceptance, inner confidence, and progress coalesce into genuine liberation. At its core, living authentically is about aligning your actions, words, and relationships with the values and truths that matter most to you, without apology or disguise. In an era when so many feel pressured to perform, curate, and conform, authenticity has become a rare and refreshing kind of power. According to research by Dr. Brené Brown, a leading voice in the study of vulnerability and courage, more than 60% of people admit to wearing a mask at work, in social gatherings, or even at home, afraid that honesty about their real feelings, fears, or dreams might lead to rejection or criticism. Yet, the cost of hiding one's authentic self is steep. Studies from the University of Michigan and Harvard Business School have shown that those who regularly suppress their beliefs and present a curated facade are significantly more prone to stress, emotional exhaustion, and diminished satisfaction in relationships. The irony is that masking and alteration, meant to protect us from judgment or loneliness, often produce the very isolation and sense of disconnect they were designed to prevent. Real-life stories confirm that the energy spent managing an artificial persona can eventually dim ambition and joy, creating a quiet sense of resentment or emptiness where fulfillment should be. Living authentically, however, transforms this narrative entirely. Choosing to be consistent with your truest self, even in small ways, creates a deep sense of congruence and inner peace that cannot be manufactured by external approval. Experts highlight the profound ripple effect of authenticity. When one person acts from an honest place, others around them feel encouraged to be more open and vulnerable as well, strengthening empathy and trust within families, workplaces, and communities. Authenticity paves the way for meaningful relationships and clearer boundaries. It can serve as a beacon, drawing in people and opportunities that resonate with your true nature, rather than those that simply fit a borrowed image. A striking example of this comes from Jordan, a teacher who for years defined herself by external standards, always striving to reflect what she thought colleagues, parents, and administrators expected. Gradually, she realized that her true passion, creative writing and emotional storytelling, was not reflected in her public life. Burnt out and detached, Jordan made the radical choice to start sharing personal stories in her classroom, weaving her lessons with vulnerable moments and open invitations for her students to do the same. To her amazement, students responded with honesty, engagement, and sincere curiosity. Her classroom became a space where imperfection was paired with learning, and where the freedom to be oneself fostered motivation. In daring to live authentically, Jordan reignited a sense of joy in her work and connected more deeply with the people around her. This chapter is your invitation to embrace that freedom. By exploring practical ways to act, speak, and make decisions from your authentic center, you unlock a steadiness and confidence that are immune to shifting trends or critical eyes. You stand poised to shape a life that is truly unapologetically your own. Let your journey to authentic living begin now, powered by everything you have built so far. Living authentically and freely is an antidote to the profound sense of fragmentation that arises from living under the constant strain of comparison and self-censorship. The effectiveness of this method lies in its radical realignment of self and experience, a process in which your internal landscape becomes the primary compass guiding each decision, conversation, and connection. Scientific research robustly supports the benefits of authenticity. A landmark study published in the Journal of Counseling Psychology demonstrated that individuals who score high on measures of authenticity exhibit significantly lower levels of anxiety, chronic stress, and symptoms of depression. These benefits persist even amid setbacks, simply because authentic living reestablishes the lost harmony between thoughts, emotions, and actions, producing a kind of internal peace that withstands external turbulence. Psychologist Dr. Stephen Joseph discusses the congruence effect, whereby people feel their greatest sense of well-being when what they do is aligned with who they are. This congruence fuels self-respect as well as resilience, making it much harder for either praise or criticism from others to topple your emotional equilibrium. Those who practice authenticity report higher quality relationships. Honesty about strengths and limitations fosters genuine trust and deeper connections rather than the transient comfort of fitting in. Moreover, living authentically decreases the emotional cost borne by prolonged performance and pretense, releasing valuable cognitive and emotional resources for creativity, empathy, and exploration. Practicing authenticity is uniquely powerful because it invites you to engage fully, daring to reveal both your strengths and your growing edges. This transformation is vividly illustrated in the real journey of Lila, an engineer who spent most of her early career conforming to a rigid, unspoken code of conduct dictated by her workplace culture. Carefully watching her words and modeled behaviors, she felt increasingly distant, not just from her colleagues but from herself. Her private passions for art, her unconventional sense of humor, and even aspects of her core values were all hidden behind a professional facade she feared was required for advancement. The breakthrough began when a life crisis forced her to confront the gap between her outward performance and her inward truth. Deciding that connection mattered more than compliance, Lila chose to reveal herself in small but intentional ways. She decorated her workspace with her own paintings, shared her creative ideas in meetings even when they felt risky, and started honest conversations with those she trusted. Instead of rejection, Leela encountered a new depth of acceptance, both from others and within herself. Colleagues began to echo her openness, meetings gained color and vitality, and her personal sense of meaning expanded. When challenges at work and in her personal life continued, Leela found herself far more equipped to navigate difficulties, because her presence and energy were no longer siphoned off by the effort of hiding. The transformation sustained itself not because life became easier, but because every difficulty was met by the same core strength that came from letting her authentic self lead. The urgency of embracing this method is unmistakable in a world overloaded by curated realities, echo chambers, and relentless social pressures. Without authenticity, it is all too easy to become a stranger in your own life, forever waiting for someone else's recognition, as if the permission to live freely lies outside you. Living authentically changes the foundation of every experience and relationship, rooting you firmly in an unshakable sense of self and unleashing a lasting freedom that comparison and pretense can never touch. To live authentically and freely, begin with an honest inventory of the spaces, routines, and relationships in your life where you feel the most tension or disconnect between your true desires and your outward actions. Set aside time to notice situations when you edit your words, suppress emotions, or restrict your choices to fit others' expectations. A practical exercise is to keep a daily authenticity journal for 1 week. Each evening, jot down where you showed up honestly and where you held back out of fear of judgment or rejection. Becoming aware of these critical moments is the first gentle yet powerful act of self-recognition, and it opens the door for deliberate change. Once you are conscious of these moments, choose one low-stakes context to practice authenticity intentionally. Perhaps it's expressing a genuine preference about a shared meal rather than automatically deferring, or choosing to dress in a way that feels true to your style, even if it's outside your norm. Celebrate the courage it takes to act from your true values, noticing if you experience a sense of relief or self-respect, even if the response from others is neutral or uncertain. Your willingness to start small prevents overwhelm and proves to yourself that authenticity is not as risky as your mind once told you. These small acts are wins in themselves, and they build your confidence muscle with every repetition. Then gradually expand your practice to conversations and decisions with the people who matter most in your life. Before a social interaction, pause to breathe and silently ground yourself in a core value or intention. You might think, today I want to be honest, even if it means disagreeing with someone I care about, or my goal is to share at least one personal story. If nerves surface, respond kindly to yourself and remember, authenticity is not about being loud, dramatic, or confessional, but about being sincere in words and actions, neither exaggerating nor shrinking what is true. The authenticity journal becomes invaluable here. After each attempt, reflect on how it felt and what you learned about yourself or the reactions you received. A valuable mindset to cultivate is self-forgiveness for the moments when old habits return. It's natural to sometimes default back to people-pleasing or silence, especially in the face of long-standing patterns or sensitive relationships. Instead of seeing these moments as failures, treat them as data points in your growth. As you reflect, crowd out self-criticism by acknowledging the effort and then setting a simple goal for your next opportunity. Remember, improvement is a process, and every small act of living true to yourself deserves recognition. It also helps to actively seek out relationships, both personal and professional, where authenticity is celebrated. Surrounding yourself with others who respect rather than require your individuality makes it easier to consistently show up as yourself. In time, your self-trust will grow so strong that authenticity becomes not an act, but simply a natural expression of who you are, on any given day and in any circumstance. As weeks turn to months, you'll begin to notice deep shifts, a sense of freedom in your gestures, clarity in decision-making, and an increased sense of belonging that doesn't rely on blending in. These early results are not only worth celebrating, they are evidence that living authentically is the key that unlocks a lasting sense of ease, connection, and fulfillment. This transformation is not abstract or unreachable. It is built one choice, one small act of courage at a time. As we reach the end of this book, let's reflect on the journey we've taken together. You've uncovered the hidden traps of comparison and discovered how approval addiction, fragile self-worth, loss of direction, and self-doubt all feed the cycle of measuring yourself against others. Each chapter has offered you not just understanding, but real, actionable strategies for changing the narrative, breaking approval dependence, building inner confidence, owning your unique journey, and valuing progress over perfection. Most importantly, you've learned how to claim your authentic self and live more freely, unburdened by others' standards. Remember, the real power comes from applying these lessons in your daily life and celebrating even the smallest steps forward. Thank you for dedicating your time and energy to this healing process, for it is your willingness to begin that leads to lasting transformation. If you found value in this content, please like, comment with your thoughts or insights, and subscribe to the channel for more on personal growth. Your engagement helps grow our community and brings hope and strength to others on their own journey to true self-liberation.